I want to start today with a bit of a paradox. You know, we usually think of philosophy as this really dusty, abstract thing that happens in libraries.
Yeah.
You picture these guys in, I don't know, tweed jackets or maybe togas sitting around discussing the definition of justice while the real world is, on fire.
Yeah, well, the rest of us are just trying to get through the day.
Exactly. But the philosophy we are diving into today, it didn't start in a library. It didn't start in a university lecture hall.
No.
It started because a guy lost absolutely everything he owned in a shipwreck and had, by all accounts, a complete mental breakdown in a bookstore.
It really is the ultimate phoenix from the ashes story. And
Yeah.
honestly, it's a bit of a bait and switch for most people.
What do you mean?
Well, when we say Stoicism, people have this immediate mental image pop into their heads. They think of the stiff upper lip. They think of, the British aristocracy or maybe a Navy SEAL who just refuses to admit he's cold.
Right, the Spock archetype. The whole idea that to be stoic is to just be an emotional brick wall. You just suppress everything, you endure everything, and you never, ever complain.
Which is just so ironic because if you actually dig into the source material, and we have a huge stack of it today, everything from the early fragments to the Roman diaries, that characterization is almost completely backwards.
It's a total misreading.
A total misreading. The early Stoics, they weren't trying to be statues. They were trying to be artists of living. They viewed the mind as a fire, a literal designing fire.
See, that's the part that really surprised me when I was prepping for this. We think of it as a coping mechanism, something you use when you get fired or your relationship ends.
But just be stoic about it.
Right. But deep down, under the hood, it's this incredibly weird, rigorous system of physics and logic. It's actually closer to something like The Matrix than it is to a modern self-help book.
Oh, absolutely. It is a system for hacking your own operating system.
Yeah.
But, and this is the key, to understand the hack, you have to understand the code.
And that code wasn't written in a vacuum.
No, it was written in a very specific place at a very specific time. We aren't in a lecture hall. We need to mentally transport ourselves back to Athens around 300 BC.
Okay, let's set the scene, because the location is actually where the name comes from. We aren't in the academy with Plato's ghosts, and we aren't in the Lyceum with Aristotle's biology students. We are downtown.
We are in the Stoa Poikile,
Yeah.
the painted Stoa. And you have to imagine a colonnade, a long covered walkway with columns on one side and a big wall on the other. This was right on the north side of the Agora.
Which was the beating heart of Athens.
The absolute beating heart. So this is the marketplace. It is not a quiet, peaceful campus.
No, far from it.
It's sensory overload. You've got fishmongers yelling about the catch of the day, like right next to you. You've got sword swallowers performing for tourists.
Beggars, politicians, merchants haggling over the price of olive oil.
It probably smelled like sweat and fish and dust and spices, just this chaotic mix. And right there, in the middle of all this noise and chaos, you have this philosopher, Zeno, pacing back and forth, lecturing.
It's a totally public space.
It's the most public space possible. And that's crucial. The Stoics, they got their name because they hung out at the Stoa.
That's it.
That's it. If they'd hung out on a front porch, we'd probably be calling them porkicks. But the fact that they were in the Stoa matters because it means they were engaging directly with the public. They weren't hiding away in some ivory tower.
And the painted part of the name, the Poikile, that refers to the artwork, right? This wasn't just some blank.
No, not at all. The backdrop to all these lectures on logic and virtue was literally war. The walls were covered in these massive panel paintings depicting legendary and historical conflicts.
Like what?
You had the Battle of Marathon, the Greeks fighting the Persians. You had Theseus fighting the Amazons. So while Zeno is talking about how to find inner peace and tranquility, the visual context is struggle. It's violence. It's the clash of civilizations.
Wow. That feels like the perfect metaphor for the whole philosophy, doesn't it?
It really is. The philosophy isn't about escaping the battle. It's about finding a calm center while the battle rages right there behind you.
Okay, so let's look at the man standing in front of those paintings. Zeno of Citium, he's the founder. But he's not an Athenian blue blood. He's a complete outsider.
A total outsider. He's from Citium, which is on Cyprus. And the sources, they make a really big deal about his ancestry. He was likely Phoenician, or at least had Phoenician heritage.
Which in Athens at that time, that mattered.
Oh, it mattered a lot. The Athenians could be pretty xenophobic. They prided themselves on their pure language and their lineage. So Zeno comes in, And later on, his own teacher would kind of tease him about it, calling him my little Phoenician.
And he looked different too, right?
Yeah, he was described as dark-skinned, haggard, he had a thick accent. He just didn't fit the mold of the classic Athenian statesman or philosopher.
And he didn't even come to Athens to start a revolution. He wasn't on some big philosophical quest. He came to make money.
He was a merchant, a businessman, just like his dad.
What was he selling?
He was a purple dye merchant.
Yeah.
And that is a really significant detail because this purple, dye Tyrian purple, was worth its weight in gold.
Wow.
Yeah, it was incredibly difficult to produce. It was harvested from thousands of tiny sea snails. It was the color of royalty, of emperors. So Zeno's transporting a massive fortune in this dye from Phoenicia to Piraeus, the port of Athens.
And then the inciting incident, the shipwreck.
It's the ancient world's version of a stock market crash, but physically violent and, terrifying. The ship goes down. The entire cargo is lost.
Everything.
Everything. Zeno survives. He washes up in Athens, but his life as he knew it is completely over. His status, his wealth, his future, it's all at the bottom of the Aegean Sea.
I just try to imagine that moment. You're wet, you're probably in shock, you're in a foreign city where you're already kind of a second-class citizen, and you have absolutely nothing.
And this is where the legend really begins. He wanders, dazed, into a bookstore. And Diogenes Laertius is the one who tells us this story. Zeno just sits down and starts reading Xenophon's Memorabilia.
And that's a book about Socrates, right?
It's a collection of memories about Socrates, who had been dead for about 100 years at this point.
But his shadow still loomed large over Athens.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
So Zeno is reading about this guy, this Socrates, who could walk through freezing snow without shoes, who didn't care about money or possessions, who could face death by drinking hemlock without even trembling.
The ultimate example of self-possession.
Exactly. And Zeno, who just lost all his possessions, is completely mesmerized. He looks up at the bookseller, and he asks this question that changes the course of Western philosophy. He says, where can I find men like this? Where are the Socrates of today?
And this is the movie moment. The bookseller looks up, sees a guy walking by on the street, and just points.
Just points. And he says, follow that man. And the man he points to is Crates of Thebes, a cynic philosopher.
Okay, we have to pause on the cynics here because I feel like the word cynic today just means you're sarcastic and negative. Oh, he's such a cynic, he hates everything.
Right.
But the ancient cynics were something else entirely.
It was something else. Cynic comes from the Greek word kynegos, which means dog-like. And they took that as a badge of honor.
They wanted to be like dogs.
In a way, yes. They believed that civilization was fundamentally corrupt. All the rules, how to dress, how to eat, how to speak politely, were just fake. They were social conventions that made you unhappy.
So the only way to be happy was to live in accordance with nature.
Exactly. And nature doesn't care about table manners or private property or shame.
So they were basically the original punk rockers, or maybe like homeless performance artists.
A bit of both. Crates, the guy Zeno was told to follow, had been an incredibly wealthy man. But he gave away his entire fortune to live on the streets. He carried a staff and a little satchel, wore one rough cloak, and that was it. No house, no job, no shame.
And this is who Zeno, the formerly respectable, wealthy merchant, starts following. I mean, that must have been a massive culture shock.
Huge. Zeno is still worried about his reputation, his social standing, and Crates is, well, he's doing what cynics do, living like a dog.
There's a story that illustrates this clash perfectly, the one about the lentil soup.
Oh, the lentil soup, it's the best. So Zeno is studying with Crates, but he's still got that social anxiety. He's modest. He cares what people think of him. And Crates decides, I need to break this kid of his shame.
It's like extreme exposure therapy.
It is the most extreme exposure therapy. Crates hands Zeno a clay pot filled with lentil soup. Now, lentils were the food of the poor. But the issue wasn't just the food. It was that Crates told him to carry it through the Ceramicus, the pottery district.
And this was a trendy area.
It was a very cool, trendy area. It would be like asking someone today to carry a slop bucket through a high-end shopping mall.
Zeno is mortified. He's trying to hide the pot under his cloak so none of the cool Athenians see him with his poor person soup.
Exactly. He's skulking around trying to be invisible. Crates spots him, sees him trying to hide it, and walks right up to him. He takes a staff and smash. He shatters the pot right there in the street.
Oh, that's a nightmare. An absolute nightmare.
The soup just goes everywhere. It's running down Zeno's legs. He's covered in lentils and clay shards. People are stopping and staring.
I'm cringing just thinking about it.
Zeno is so completely humiliated that he just turns and starts to run away. And Crates just laughs. He yells after him, "Why run away, my little Phoenician? Nothing terrible has befallen you."
That one line, nothing terrible has befallen you.
That's the seed of Stoicism right there, isn't it? It is. It's the core insight. The event soup on legs is just physics. It's just wetness and temperature and stickiness. The terrible part, the humiliating part, was entirely in Zeno's mind. It was a judgment of the event. I look stupid, this is bad, my reputation is ruined.
So Crates was trying to show him that if you just remove the judgment, you're just a guy with soup on his legs. It's an inconvenience, maybe, but it's not a tragedy.
Precisely.
But Zeno didn't stay a cynic. He eventually branched off and started his own school. Why? Was the soup incident just too much?
I think the soup was part of it, but intellectually, Zeno wanted more. The Cynics were fantastic at tearing things down, mocking society, living simply, but they didn't really have a system. They didn't have a physics or a logic to explain why the universe worked the way it did, or how to build a coherent life. Zeno was a structural thinker. He wanted to build a house, not just, live on the street.
So he starts teaching at the Stoa, and he develops this three-part system: physics, logic, and ethics. And he even used a hand gesture to explain how we know things, his epistemology. I love this visual.
The hand analogy. It's brilliant. It describes how the mind grasps reality. So you have to picture Zeno holding out his hand, palm open, fingers extended. He says, "This is perception." An impression hits your mind. You see a tree.
Okay, open hand, I see the tree.
Then he curls his finger slightly like a claw. He says, "This is a scent." You agree with the impression. Yes, that is a tree. You're buying into it.
Got it.
Then he makes a tight fist. This is comprehension, or catalepsis in the Greek. You have a firm, unshakable grasp of the concept. You understand the tree.
But he's not done. There's one more step.
No, he's not done. He takes his other hand and grabs that fist, squeezing it as tight as he can, and he says, "This is knowledge." And here's the kicker. Zeno believed that only the wise, the perfect Stoic sage, ever possessed that final stage.
So pretty much no one.
Pretty much no one. True knowledge is so firm that no argument, no trickery, no illusion can loosen that grip.
Wow. That sets an incredibly high bar. It means that most of us, most of the time, are just walking around with open palms or maybe a loose claw. We have impressions and opinions, but we don't really know anything with certainty.
That's the Stoic view. We have opinions, we have beliefs, but we rarely have the fist-in-hand certainty of the sage.
So Zeno lays this incredible foundation, but he's not the one who built the fortress. That credit goes to the third head of the school, Chrysippus. The outline quotes someone saying, "If Chrysippus had not existed, neither would the Stoa."
Yeah, that was the common saying. Zeno was the prophet, Chrysippus was the theologian, or maybe Zeno was the visionary CEO, and Chrysippus was the CTO who actually wrote all the code.
And he wrote a lot of it.
A staggering amount. The sources say he wrote over 700 books, and he had to be that prolific because by the time he took over the school, the Stoics were under constant intellectual attack.
From who? The Academy.
The Academy, Plato's school, and especially the skeptics. The skeptics were arguing that you can't know anything for certain, that Zeno's fist was an impossible ideal. So Chrysippus had to build this defensive wall of logic that was so dense and so rigorous that no skeptical argument could penetrate it.
And this brings us to logic. And I think when modern listeners hear logic, they just think common sense. But Chrysippus was doing something much more technical. He was basically inventing propositional logic. How is that different from what Aristotle was doing just down the street?
It's a fundamental shift.
Yeah.
Aristotle was focused on term logic, the famous syllogisms. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. It's all about the relationship between categories or terms.
Right.
Chrysippus wasn't interested in terms so much as entire propositions, complete statements that can be true or false, and how they connect to each other. If it is day, then it is light. But it is day, therefore it is light.
It sounds like computer code, like if-then statements.
It is exactly the foundation of modern computer logic. It's incredible. But Chrysippus used this new tool to map the very structure of the universe. And to do that, he developed this really trippy concept called lecta, or sayables.
Yeah, explain lecta. Because the Stoics were materialists, right? They believed that only physical bodies exist. So where do things like words and meanings fit into that?
That is the exact problem he was trying to solve. If I say the sun is hot, the sun is a physical body. The heat is a physical state of the sun. My voice is a vibration of air, a body. But the meaning of the sentence, that isn't a physical object. You can't touch the meaning. You can't weigh it.
So does it exist in their system?
This is the genius of it. Chrysippus said it subsists, it's real, but it's incorporeal. Lecta are the underlying meanings of our speech, the propositions themselves. And he used this idea to fight a war against the Platonists.
So Plato believed in universals, that there's a perfect abstract form of a chair existing in some heaven, and all the chairs we see are just imperfect copies of it.
Exactly. The capital C chair. The capital M man, and Chrysippus thought this was nonsense. So he used a logic game called the not someone argument to just completely demolish the idea.
Okay, walk me through the trap here.
It goes like this. If someone is in Athens, he is not in Megara. Simple enough, right?
Sure, one person, one place.
Then he says, man is in Athens. He's referring to the universal man. So if that's true.
Then man is not in Megara.
Exactly. But that's absurd. A Platonist would have to say the universal man is everywhere at once. So Chrysippus forces you to admit that the universal man isn't someone. It's not a real entity that can be in a place.
It's just a concept, a word we use to group people.
Right. Only specific individual bodies exist. There are no magical forms floating around. He's using logic to ground us in physical reality. There are just things acting and being acted upon.
Speaking of bodies, we have to address the elephant, or maybe the donkey in the room, the story of Chrysippus's death. It's arguably the most famous thing about him, which is a real shame given his genius.
It is the ultimate absurd ending. Diogenes Laertius, our main source for this stuff, reports that Chrysippus was watching a donkey eat some figs. Now, you have to imagine, figs were these sticky, sweet, expensive treats. Seeing a donkey just struggling to eat them was apparently slapstick gold in 207 BC.
And he decides to crack a joke.
He does. He calls out to his slave, or maybe just to the room in general, "Now give the donkey a drink of undiluted wine to wash down the figs."
Okay.
And he found his own witticism so hysterically funny that he started laughing and laughing. And he literally couldn't stop. He went into a fit. Maybe it was a seizure, maybe a cardiac arrest caused by the strain, and he died.
He died laughing at his own joke about a drunk donkey.
It sounds completely ridiculous, but in a strange way it almost fits. The Stoics believed that death itself was an indifferent. It didn't matter how you died, only that you lived virtuously. So dying in a fit of pure joy, honestly, there are worse ways to go.
That's very true. But let's pivot from his death to his physics, because this is the engine of the car. We really can't understand the ethics, the how to live stuff, if we don't understand what they thought the universe was. And this is where modern listeners might feel a bit of vertigo.
Yes, if you think Stoicism is just a secular, rational self-help guide, the physics will absolutely shock you. They believe the universe was a living animal.
Living animal.
A single, cohesive, living organism. And God wasn't a bearded man sitting on a cloud. God was the mind or the soul of that animal.
But wait, they're materialists, so God has to be physical.
Correct. So they describe God as a designing fire, or more technically, pneuma, which means breath or spirit.
Pneuma, like pneumatic tires powered by air.
Exactly. It's a mixture of air and fire. They believe this pneuma permeated every single piece of matter in the universe, holding it all together. It's what gives a stone its cohesion. They call that state hexis, a holding. It's what makes a plant grow. They'd call that fusus. It's what gives animals impulse and senses psyche. And in humans, it becomes logos reason.
So everything is connected because everything is literally held together by this intelligent web of divine fire breath.
Think of it like a spider web. Or a better analogy they used is a guitar string. If you touch one part of the string, the vibration travels through the whole thing because of the tension. The Stoics call this concept a konos, or tension. The universe is held in a constant, active tension by God.
Okay, this leads directly to the scary part. If everything is connected, and God is this perfect, rational fire determining how everything moves, then everything is determined.
Yes, this is Stoic determinism, fate. Because the universe is perfectly rational, nothing happens by accident. Cause A leads to cause B, which leads to cause C. It's an unbroken chain of cause and effect stretching back to the very beginning of time.
Okay, stop. Here's where I get off the bus. Because if everything is determined, if my choice to eat a bagel this morning was set in motion by the Big Bang, then I have no free will. I'm just a puppet. How can I be virtuous if I can't actually choose anything?
This was the exact attack leveled against them in the ancient world. If fate exists, why bother trying to be a good person? And Chrysippus, being the master logician, had to solve this puzzle. He developed what we now call compatibilism, the idea that fate and free will can exist together.
That sounds like having your cake and eating it, too. How on earth does that work?
He used a great analogy, the cylinder analogy. Imagine a cylinder resting on a gentle slope. If I come along and push it, it starts to roll down the hill.
Okay, makes sense.
Now, what caused it to roll? Chrysippus would say two things caused it. First, the push. That's the external cause. That's fate. That's the world happening to you.
Right.
But the second cause is the shape of the cylinder itself, its own nature. If it were a cube, I could push it with the exact same force, but it wouldn't roll. It rolls because it is round. That's the internal cause.
So the external push triggers the event, but my internal nature determines the style of my reaction.
Precisely. Chrysippus argues that while you don't control the push of external events, you are entirely responsible for your shape, your character. You roll the way you do because you are you. Your action proceeds from your own nature.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to push back like an annoying skeptic here. Didn't fate also create my shape? If my character is just the result of my genetics and my upbringing and all these past causes, isn't my roundness also determined from the start?
That is the deep philosophical problem, isn't it? And the Stoics would, I think, have to admit, yes, your nature is also part of that grand causal chain. But they would argue that because the action proceeds through your mind, through your assent and your reason, it is still up to you. You aren't bypassed. You are the processing unit.
I see. So I'm not a rock being thrown. I'm a computer running a program. The result might be inevitable given the inputs, but I still have to do the processing.
And that leads to the second analogy, which is much more visceral and, I think, easier to grasp, the dog in the cart.
This one is my favorite.
So you have to picture a dog tied by a leash to a moving cart. The cart represents fate. It is going to move from point A to point B. That is absolutely non-negotiable.
The cart's going to do what the cart's going to do.
Exactly. Now, the dog has a choice. It can see where the cart is going and trot alongside it, move with the flow, enjoy the walk. That is what they call following willingly. Or it can dig in its paws, bark, pull back, choke itself on the leash, and try to go the other way.
Yeah.
But the cart is stronger. The dog will be dragged, scraped, and miserable to point B anyway.
Fate leads the willing, but drags the unwilling.
That's the famous quote. For the Stoics, the only true freedom we have is the freedom to align our will with reality, to accept the movement of the cart. If you fight reality, you don't change reality. You just get road rash.
That is a tough, even terrifying definition of freedom. It's essentially surrender or suffer.
They would call it alignment. It's the difference between swimming with the current or trying to swim upstream in a raging river until you drown.
Let's look at another one of Chrysippus's logic puzzles, because this one really, really breaks your brain. The growing argument. This is all about identity.
Right. This is another attack from the skeptics, they asked. If we are just physical bodies and our bodies are changing constantly, we eat, we shed skin, our cells are replaced, how can you say you're the same person today as you were yesterday?
It's the classic ship of Theseus problem. If you replace every single plank of a ship over time, is it still the same ship at the end?
Exactly. And Chrysippus tried to solve this with a bizarre thought experiment called Dion and Theon.
Okay, let's try to unpack this.
Imagine two guys standing here. The first one is named Dion. He's a normal, full-bodied human being.
Hello, Dion.
Now, the second guy is Theon. But Theon isn't a separate person. Theon is literally Dion, but minus 1 foot. So you have to imagine we mentally draw a line at Dion's ankle and say everything above this line we will call Theon.
Okay, so Theon is a subset of Dion. They occupy the same space, effectively, except for that 1 foot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For the brutal part, we put on a saw and we chop off Dion's foot.
Jeez. Oh,
Now, what do we have? Physically, Dion and Theon are identical. They're both man missing a foot. But the skeptics argued. Two distinct entities cannot occupy the exact same space at the exact same time. It's a logical contradiction. So one of them must cease to exist. Who dies? Dion or Theon?
My gut reaction says Theon survives. Theon was defined as Dion minus a foot before the cut. After the cut, that physical object is still there. Dion is the one who changed. He lost a part. So Dion dies and Theon lives on.
That's the trap. That's exactly what the skeptics expect you to say. But Chrysippus says, no, you've got it backwards. Theon dies. Dion survives.
What's he? Explain that.
Because Dion is the name for the unique individual substance, the persistent identity. Theon, on the other hand, was just an arbitrary mental construct of a part of Dion. You cannot have a part without the whole that it belongs to. When the foot was cut, the definition of the whole person of Dion changed, but the individual entity, Dion, remained. Theon, the partial concept, simply vanishes because the whole he was a part of has been reconfigured.
So he's defending the idea that I am a cohesive self, not just a temporary pile of parts. My identity persists through change.
That's it, exactly. Even if you lose a limb or get old or your cells change, the quality of being that unique individual persists. It shows how obsessed Chrysippus was with making sure that identity was a solid logical concept. Because if we don't have stable identities, we can't be held responsible for our actions over time.
Okay, so we have the physics, God is a rational fire. We have the logic, propositions, and identity. Now we have to land the plane. How does all of this incredibly abstract stuff help me when I'm stuck in traffic and late for a meeting? This brings us to the ethics.
Right, the payoff. The goal of life, for a Stoic, is eudaimonia. We translate it as happiness, but it's more like flourishing or living a good life. And the formula they came up with is the most radical part of the whole system. Happiness equals virtue, period, full stop.
See, this is the hardest sell because most of us think happiness, virtue, plus a good income, plus good health, plus maybe some pizza on Fridays.
The Stoics would say, no, those things are nice. We prefer to have them. But they are not goods. This is the famous and famously misunderstood doctrine of the indifference, or adiaphora.
Okay, we need to fight about this. Because if you tell me that my child's health isn't indifferent, I'm going to call you a sociopath. How can any loving parent possibly say that their child's safety is indifferent?
And this is where the English translation completely fails us. Indifferent in modern English means I don't care. In Stoicism, it means it makes no difference to my moral character or virtue.
Unpack that. What does that mean?
It means, can you be a good, virtuous person if you are sick?
Yes.
Can you be a good, virtuous person if you are poor? Yes. Can you be a good, virtuous person if you, God forbid, lose a child? Yes. This is incredibly difficult, but yes. Therefore, health, wealth, and even family are not required for moral perfection. They are external to your virtue.
Okay, see the logic, but we still want those things. We're not robots.
And the Stoics totally acknowledge that. This is what's so often missed. They split the indifference into two buckets, preferred and dispreferred. Health is a preferred indifferent. Is according to nature, you should take your medicine. You should try to protect your child. That is the rational, natural, virtuous action. But if despite all your best efforts, your child still gets sick, you've not lost the good. The good was the virtue you displayed in trying to protect them. The outcome is up to fate. The effort is up to you.
This is the archer analogy, isn't it?
It's the perfect analogy. An archer tries to hit a target. He selects the best bow, he checks the wind, he aims perfectly, he has a smooth release. All of that is virtue. That is what is up to him. But the moment the arrow leaves the string,
Anything can happen.
a sudden gust of wind could hit it, the target could move, a bird could fly in the way. Whether he hits the bullseye is ultimately indifferent to his skill as an archer.
So success isn't shitting the target. Success is making the perfect shot.
Exactly. If you tie your happiness and your self-worth to the outcome, I must get the promotion. My kids must be healthy. I must be liked. You are a slave to the cart. You are gambling your peace of mind on things you fundamentally do not control.
But if you tie your self-worth to your own choices, I will work hard, I will be a good parent, I will act with integrity, then you're invincible. Nothing external can touch that.
You're invincible. And that connects directly to their psychology. Because when we miss the target, what do we usually do? We freak out. We get angry or sad or anxious. And the Stoics had a very specific, very revolutionary view on what emotions actually are.
This is the cognitive theory of emotion.
It is. Most people then and now think emotions are like reflexes. Someone insults you, you feel anger, it's automatic, like a knee-jerk reaction.
And the Stoics disagree.
Fundamentally, they argued that emotions, or what they called passions, are judgments. They are opinions that we agree to. To feel anger, for instance, you have to assent to two propositions. Number one, I have been wronged, and number two, it is right and proper for me to seek revenge.
So there's a cognitive step in the middle of the event and the feeling.
Yes. And that step, that judgment, is usually where we screw up. We judge an indifferent, like a verbal insult, to be a terrible evil. We make a category error.
But it happens so fast. If someone slacks me in the face, I'm angry before I can even think, Proposition 1, I have been wronged. Proposition 2.
And Chrysippus knew this. He had a great analogy for it, the runner analogy. He said, a person who is just walking can stop whenever they want. They are in full control. That is reason. But a passion is like a runner who is sprinting full speed down a steep hill. They have excessive impulse. Even if they see a cliff and want to stop, Their momentum carries them forward. They have lost control of their legs.
So the goal isn't to stop when you're already in a full sprint. It's to catch the judgment before you even start running down the hill.
Exactly. Once you are in a full-blown rage, you are the runner. You can't just stop on a dime. You have to intervene right at the start, at the ascent stage, before you agree to the judgment that starts the sprint.
What about inner conflict, though? The outline mentions the Greek play Medea. This is a famously dark story. Medea kills her own children just to punish her husband for leaving her.
It's the ultimate tragedy. And there's a famous line where Medea says, "I know what evils I'm about to do, but my anger is stronger than my sound considerations."
That feels exactly like the runner taking over. She knows it's wrong, but she can't stop.
And Chrysippus analyzed this scene very closely. Socrates used to argue that people only do wrong out of ignorance. If you really knew better, you'd do better. Chrysippus pointed to Medea and said, "No, look, she knows it's wrong, she does it anyway."
So is it a battle between emotion and reason? The heart versus the head?
That's the Plato view. The soul is a chariot with two horses, reason and emotion, pulling in different directions. Chrysippus said, no. The soul is unitary. It's one thing. What's happening in Medea isn't a battle between two different parts of her. It's a rapid oscillation of the same part.
Oscillation, like flickering back and forth.
Exactly. 1 second, her reason judges. Killing my children is a monstrous evil. The next second, her reason judges. The injustice Jason has done me is so great that this is the only appropriate response. She's flipping back and forth between these two rational judgments so fast, it just looks like a blur of rage.
Wow.
It's not that she's overwhelmed by a separate force called emotion. It's that her reason itself has become unstable and corrupted by a false judgment.
That is actually a much scarier idea. It means the monster isn't some separate thing inside me that I have to fight. The monster is me, just thinking very, very clearly about the wrong things.
Precisely. Which is why the only solution is therapeutics. You have to heal your reason. You have to debug the logic code so it doesn't glitch out when the pressure's on.
Okay, let's talk about that healing process, the toolkit. Because Stoicism is, at its heart, incredibly practical. It's mental medicine.
It is. Chrysippus explicitly viewed his school as a hospital for the soul. He said something like, "Is there no art of healing for the soul as there is for the body?" And the goal of this healing was apatheia.
Which, we have to stress, does not mean apathy.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. Apathy today means boredom or not caring. Apatheia meant freedom from irrational passions. It's the state of mind of the archer who aims perfectly but doesn't have a breakdown if the wind moves the arrow. It's tranquility.
So let's run through the tools. We've kind of hinted at them, but let's codify them for the listener. Tool number 1, the dichotomy of control.
This is the absolute foundation.
Right.
Made famous by Epictetus, but it comes from the early physics. You have to constantly, consciously sort your life into two piles. Pile A, things that are up to me. Pile B, things that are not up to me.
And what's in each pile?
Pile A is tiny. It's my opinions, my aims, my desires, my judgments, my inner world. Pile B is everything else. My body, my reputation, my possessions, the traffic, the weather, other people.
And the rule is what?
The rule is to focus all your energy on Pile A and treat everything in Pile B as a preferred indifferent. If you invest your happiness in Pile B, you are signing up for a life of anxiety and frustration because you're betting on things you don't control.
Okay. Tool number 2, cognitive distancing.
This is about talking to your impressions. When a thought pops into your head, I'm going to completely fail this presentation. You need to stop and talk back to it. You say, you are just an impression and not at all the thing you claim to represent. You separate the event from the judgment.
It's decatastrophizing. So instead of, this is a disaster, I'm ruined, it's, I have an impression that I made a mistake on a slide deck.
Exactly. You describe things in boring, physical, objective terms. They had exercises for this. This expensive wine is just fermented grape juice. This fancy purple robe is just sheep wool dyed in the blood of snails. You strip away the glamour and the horror.
Tool number 3, the view from above.
This one is my personal favorite. It's a visualization exercise. You imagine leaving your body, floating up to the ceiling, then up above the building, then above the city. Then you're looking down at the entire Earth from space.
Like Carl Sagan's pale blue dot.
Very much like that.
Yeah.
And when you look down from that cosmic perspective, you see armies fighting for borders that you can't even see. You see people stressing over money and status. And suddenly, your problem, that angry email you got, looks infinitesimally small. It's about gaining perspective.
It aligns your personal perspective with the Godfire perspective, the cosmic view.
That's the idea. It reminds you that you're a tiny part of a massive, rational, interconnected whole.
Okay, last one. Tool number 4, premeditatio malorum. The premeditation of adversity. This one sounds pretty dark.
It does sound morbid. The practice is to wake up in the morning and briefly, calmly imagine things going wrong. My car could break down today. I could get fired. My spouse could leave me.
Okay, why on earth would I do that? I have enough anxiety already, thank you very much.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
Anxiety comes from the unknown, from the what if. The Stoic turns the what if into a so what. You visualize the worst case, you sit with it for a moment, and you realize, if that happened, I would cope. I would survive. I would still have my virtue. I would still be me.
So it's a kind of psychological inoculation. You give yourself a small, controlled dose of the virus so the real thing doesn't kill you when it comes.
It's exactly that. And it has a wonderful side effect, gratitude. If you take a moment to imagine losing your partner when you walk into the kitchen and see them making coffee, you are genuinely, deeply happy they are there. You don't take the present moment for granted because you visualized its potential end.
Now, all of this sounds startlingly modern. And there's a very good reason for that. We aren't just doing ancient history here. Stoicism is the direct source code for a lot of modern therapy.
It is the direct ancestor. It's not even a debate. In the 1950s, a psychologist named Albert Ellis started rational emotive behavior therapy, or REBT. A bit later, Aaron Beck developed cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Both of them explicitly cited the Stoics as their philosophical foundation.
The ABC model in CBT is basically just Chrysippus.
It is, almost word for word. A is the activating event, the lentil soup spills. B is your belief or judgment about the event. It's terrible and humiliating. C is the emotional consequence, anxiety, shame, running away. CBT teaches you that A doesn't cause C. B causes C. If you change your belief, you change the emotional consequence.
That is the Stoic theory of passions, one-to-one.
100%. And we have the studies now, things like SMRT, which stands for Stoic Mindfulness and Resilience Training, where they put people through a month of these exact ancient practices. And it works. It measurably reduces rumination and negative emotion, and it increases life satisfaction.
But, and this is a huge warning label we have to put on this, we have to distinguish all of this from what researchers call trait stoicism.
Oh, this is a massive and crucial distinction. If you look up Stoicism in a medical journal, they're often talking about trait stoicism, which is the tendency to suppress emotion, refuse to ask for help, and just suffer in silence. The whole man-up attitude.
And that is actually very bad for you.
It is toxic.
Yeah.
It's correlated with cardiovascular issues, with depression, with delayed diagnosis for serious illness because people won't go to the doctor.
No.
That is not what Zeno or Chrysippus ever taught.
Yeah.
They didn't teach suppression. I feel nothing. They taught regulation. I will process this feeling correctly. And you have to remember, Zeno lived and taught in the marketplace. He had friends. They were social creatures. Stoicism isn't about being a lone wolf. It's about being a healthy, resilient part of the human pack.
So we've covered the shipwreck, the lentil soup, the drunk donkey, the divine fire, the logic puzzles, and the therapy. It's a massive, incredible system. But I want to close with one final image. We started with Zeno's beginning, his rock bottom. Let's look at his end.
It's a really powerful ending. Zeno ran the school for decades. He was an old man, around 72. And one day, he's just leaving the Stoa after teaching. He trips and falls.
A simple, mundane fall.
A simple fall. He breaks his toe. And he's lying there on the ground. And in that moment, he slaps the earth with the palm of his hand. And he quotes a line from a lost tragedy, a play called Niobe. He says, I come, why dost thou call for me?
And he's talking to the earth, to death.
He's talking to fate, to the universe. He took the broken toe as a sign. The rational mechanism of the universe was telling him, time's up, Zeno. And he didn't call for a doctor. He didn't complain. He went home and saw them. The sources say he held his breath until he died.
Which is, medically impossible. You can't actually kill yourself by holding your breath. But the symbolism of the act is what's important.
The symbolism is everything. It represents either total control or total acceptance. He didn't wait for death to come and drag him like the unwilling dog behind the cart. He saw the cart turning toward the final exit, and he chose to trot alongside it. He died on his own terms, in perfect alignment with nature.
And that leaves us with the big question to chew on. Was that final act Zeno quitting life because of a broken toe the ultimate act of personal control, or was it the ultimate act of submission to fate?
And if you could ask a true Stoic, they would probably smile and say, is there a difference?
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you in the next one.